In this video, I'm going to show you how in just a few short minutes we're going to configure the virtual identity server with a connection to a Microsoft SQL Server database. What this is going to allow us to do is take the data that resides in that database and make it appear as if it's LDAP data to an LDAP client, whether that's an LDAP browser or whether that's an application such as SharePoint. So let's kind of recap what our environment looks like right now. Currently, we have the virtual identity server set up as a proxy server to Active Directory. So this is a connection with our LDAP manager browser application, browsing Active Directory, and then through the virtual identity server, it's browsing and placed everything under a virtual OU equals AD. And again, we have a one-to-one real-time proxy of the data. So we're just reading the data here. The virtual identity server is proxying that request down to Active Directory, and we're seeing everything that's underneath Active Directory. So that's what the current configuration we have. Let's go make the change and let's go connect to that SQL Server database. So we're going to do that with our management console, which is our interface to maintain and configure our environment. We're going to come in here, and what we're going to do is let's take a look quick at our existing VISA, which is a virtual identity server adapter or a connection to a database or an LDAP. Here we see that OU equals AD that we just saw in our browser, and the connection to Active Directory, which is 389 and with our optimal IDM administrator. So we're going to create a new adapter here, which is a new virtual identity server adapter connection. We're going to create this to SQL Server. So I'm going to put the search order for 2 because the first one is to Active Directory. Then I'm going to tell it to search SQL Server next. So notice all these adapters out of the box. I'm going to choose SQL, which is the Microsoft SQL Server Adapter. Notice it did pre-fill some information. We'll come back to that. I'm going to give it first a virtual partition. So just like that OU equals AD, I'm going to give this OU equals SQL, comma DC equals VIS, comma DC equals net. And that's going to be our namespace for the SQL Server. Notice here it's got a DLL name. Let's just double check, make sure that it is there. Yep, it is. So we're going to click OK, and that's the DLL name. And it already filled in the class name by default. So we'll just choose Save here. And we look good. So now we're going to create the connection. So the next piece, actually I'm going to make one change up here at the VISA layer. Rather than having that GUID, which is definitely a good unique GUID, I'm going to call this SQL VISA, just so that for some of these other screens that may make a little more sense. It's a little bit more readable than a GUID. I'm going to do create, so I'm doing a right click here, create VISA connection. And this is going to be our connection to the SQL Server. Notice again it put in the DLL name and the adapter connection. I'm just going to put connection order, default that to 1. We do need to put the connection string here. What I'm going to do is come to an existing one. It's a standard Microsoft SQL Server connection string. I'm just going to take it from there just to eliminate some typos, make sure I've got each of the connections. So what we do here is put the user ID and the catalog that we're going to connect to. So the user ID we're going to use is VIS reader, and we're going to connect to this VIS underscore join underscore test database. So let me go ahead and put those changes in here. So again, that's going to be VIS reader, and the initial catalog was VIS underscore join underscore test, and it is on the same server here, so we'll leave that local host the same there. So this has now got our user ID and password to connect to the SQL Server, as well as our database name. So we really only have to give it one more piece of information, which is what table or view to go after. So we're going to connect to this VIS underscore users table, and here we have 4 users by default that are pre-populated. This of course could be more. And let's go ahead and configure that. So it's VIS underscore users is the name of the table, but again this could be a view. How we do that is come down to this object class mapping. This is where we're going to do virtual to physical mappings, and this is a very powerful feature of the virtual identity server, being able to virtualize this out. We're going to choose, so the virtual object class name, that is the object class at the LDAP layer at the virtual identity server, and that's the user object class. Then we're going to give it the name of the SQL database. Again, it's VIS underscore users. So VIS underscore users. That's the name of the table. Again, could be a view. The RDN attribute. This is what is the unique identifier. What should it create the relative distinguished name or the distinguished name for an object? I'm going to choose employee ID, but UID is unique right now too. So we could use UID or employee ID. I'm going to choose employee ID. And go ahead and save. Notice here also that there's a checkbox on all these items that allows you to enable or disable something very quick and easy in the interface. So that just allows you to disable something if you want to do some quick testing. So we have our object class mapping. Now let's go ahead and set up some attribute precedences. These are going to be the attributes that we want to pull from SQL Server. So what data do we want to see in our LDAP browser through the virtual identity server? I want to see cost center and reporting location. I'm not concerned about these other pieces of data for the moment when we merge later. So I'm going to set up right now in advance cost center and reporting location. So let's go ahead and set that up. So again, on the user object class, I'm going to set up cost center, and I'm going to set that attribute up. Then I'm going to create another one, and we're going to create again to the user object class, and it's going to be reporting location. And this is actually a setup in advance for a join and a merge we're going to do later. So I'm just setting this up in advance. So user cost center reporting location. They're set up. We have our Visa configured over to SQL Server. We're going to do a save XML file. So that was a right click, save XML, exit, and let's restart our virtual identity server with this configuration. So what we're going to see here after the service stops and starts, again, it's a standard Windows service. So this is also being able to be started through our interface so that you don't have to jump out to another utility, but you could go out to Control Panel Services and start it. But after this restarts, what we're going to see is this new OU equals SQL container, and we're going to see the data from the SQL Server database that now looks like LDAP data. So whether the application is SharePoint or any other LDAP-enabled application, when it does a read, an LDAP read to the virtual identity server, it is now going to see data from SQL Server that's been transformed from SQL data to LDAP data. And here we are. Notice, again, we still have our OU equals AD container, all the data being proxied from AD, but now we're also proxying the data from SQL Server. And here we are. We have employee ID 1, 2, and 3. Notice that was the RDN, and here are our users. So we have Chloe, we have Kyle, Jimmy Sheward. We have each of these users, and here we are with cost center as well as reporting location. And again, this is a one-to-one real-time proxy. So let's go to Chloe and let's change that cost center to 444. And notice here, when we look at this record, the next read, that cost center just changed to 444. It's a two-way proxy as well. Again, we're not storing any data at the virtual identity server layer, but yet that proxied and transformed an LDAP modify. So this client application did an LDAP modify, thinks it's talking to Active Directory under this OU equals SQL container, but in essence that was changed now to a SQL update. And if we do a refresh in this database table, 333. So this is, again, one-to-one real-time proxy, nothing being stored or synchronized around. It's a direct connection to that SQL database and to Active Directory, and the virtual identity server is proxying that data from both of these locations in a one-to-one real-time proxy. Check out the continuation of this video to see how we're going to join and merge the data, because these users actually exist also in Active Directory, and we're going to join and merge the data so that it looks and appears that it's one object when in reality they're both coming from SQL Server as well as from Active Directory.